Before you keep watching, I want you to do one thing. Don't look for something scary. Look for something that looks back. There is a moment in this footage where the house notices us. If you see it before we do, pause the video and tell us where it happens. Most people miss it. They went back because it looked ordinary. The little house sat on a shelf like a promise. Pink roof, plastic walls, sunlight cutting through a toy window, tiny curtains, a cereal bowl the size of a thumb, rimmed with dust, a pet bed flattened and cold, a doll's sheet pulled back, as if someone had left in a hurry. The house was small. The wrong things fit here. They opened the front door, and the silence answered. It wasn't empty. It was waiting. If you're watching this late at night, this is where you might want to lower the volume. Not because it gets loud, but because it gets close. She checked the mirror in the bedroom, lifted the tiny brush, adjusted the doll's hair out of habit. The mirror answered late. Her reflection lagged by a breath, then faltered. A strand of hair moved when she didn't. She leaned closer. For a second, the glass showed the back of the room instead of her face. Then it showed a blank place where a face should be. You think mirrors exist to tell you you're alone. This one didn't. If you notice the delay in the reflection, leave a comment with the timestamp. We didn't catch it the first time either. He pried at the kitchen cabinet. The latch was jammed. He worked at it with a blunt toothpick. The wood gave. Inside there was nothing, except a neat row of scratches beneath the shelves. Boot-shaped, small, deliberate. They angled toward the vent at the baseboard, a path that ended in darkness. On the porch, the child owner stood at the mailbox. She pulled the little flag, opened the door. An envelope slid out, empty, except for a thin smear, a ribbon of something that looked like long-dried paint. When she lifted her head, there was a sound. Tap, tap, tap. Metal on plastic. It stopped the moment she looked up. She waited. Nothing moved. Then something small pressed briefly against the inside of the mailbox, like a thumb on cold glass. The pet bowl was caked with a dull film. Once it glistened with water. Once a plastic paw pressed at the edge. Now the rim held a circle of dust. At the center, faint prints. Not a paw. Little indentations, like the heels of tiny shoes, angled toward the vent under the stairs. If you're still watching, ask yourself something honestly. At what point would you have stopped? A lamp on the mini shelf had been warm. Now the heat line was frozen on the tiny thermostat. It read a number that shouldn't exist on a toy. The lamp cord slumped. The bulb dimmed. A trail of fingerprints climbed the pole. They ended at a mirror on the wall. Across the hallway, a toy voice looped. "Come back," it said. Wrong rhythm. Wrong timing. Come. Cut. Restart. Come back. It sat at the edge of hearing, like it didn't want to be heard, just noticed. Then it stopped altogether. Silence swallowed the loop and left the last syllable hanging like a held breath. A chair in the living room was pulled out an inch. A cup beside it, tipped but not spilled. A doll sat slumped in the corner, facing the wall, its head cocked slightly. Its eyes caught the light and refused to let go, bright circles in a pale face. They weren't looking at the room. They were looking at the vent. Each room answered with a notch of absence. Each room added weight. Mirrors turned lazy. Vents became mouths. Tiny tracks moved like a language across the house. You follow them because you think you'll find a reason. A child, a sibling, a lost toy. You follow because the house has been rearranged around what's missing. They moved faster. Steps sounded like rain on plastic. Breath fogged a window the size of a fingertip. If there were a camera, it would blink through close-ups. A hairline crack beneath the staircase. A dark smear along the underside of the railing. The thermostat ticking twice when nobody touched it. The music box in the attic warped into a long, low note that vibrated in the wallpaper. He knelt at the base of the stairs, traced the scratches with his finger. They weren't random. They formed a line. They disappeared into a seam. The panel came loose easily, as if invited. Inside was a hollow lined with felt the color of old seafoam. It smelled like plastic and night. The hollow held three things: a tiny chair, pulled back, an unmade blanket, folded wrong, and a toy positioned to face outward, not placed with care, arranged like a watchman. They lifted the blanket. The soft underside was imprinted with the shape of something that was not a toy. An indentation, not a hand, not quite a paw. Something small had stayed still there for a long time. A breath scratched at the back of the throat. The house shifted, not structurally, not with boards or joints. It was a shift like awareness. The vents hummed. The mirror across the room tilted, just enough toward the hollow. If you feel like the room got smaller here, you're not imagining it. He reached in, careful hands, tender. The house kept its patience. Fingertips met plastic. Something moved against his knuckle. A tiny recoil, deliberate. The toy that faced outward turned the faintest fraction. Its painted eyes caught the light and reflected a point small as a pin. The reflection stared back. They expected a body. They expected something broken. They expected to rescue something. Instead, the thing inside watched. Outside, the sound loop began again. A soft thud from the attic. A scent like warm glue. The bedroom mirror bloomed with something that wasn't steam. A second reflection sat in the corner of the glass. Not any of them. A dark, glossy mote. It blinked. If blink is the right word for something that only catches light. As the house watched, patterns aligned, the scratches, the prints, the sounds. They weren't traces of play. They were marks of attention. Someone had been keeping time here. Someone small, patient. Someone who learned to move in the seams. They pulled back. Air rushed in. Cold, like a room after a storm. They looked at each other. The child clutched empty envelopes. The dolls stayed still. The chair remained pulled out. They stood in the doorway while the house rearranged itself behind them. The blanket folded tidy again. The mirror returned to proper angles. The thermostat smoothed to 0. The voice loop vanished. One thing remained. A pinprick of light in the far window. A reflection on the living room mirror. It might be a bubble in plastic. It might be nothing at all. It turned with the house. It followed the line of their faces. It held them. They left the door open. They set the house back on the shelf because they had to. The child patted the roof once, lightly, like a promise. They walked away carrying the dull weight of not knowing. From the shelf, the house watched. The light went out, then flickered. The reflection returned the stare. It didn't blink. If you're still here, you're part of this now. If you saw the moment, the house noticed them. Tell us where. And if you want to keep watching places that remember being watched, you know where to find us.